Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Margarita Crystal Lotus and you have come to Connections, a forum for relationship expression and healing. This is episode 23 and today's topic is, what does money mean? A journey through the levels of development. So with me here I have my buddy Heidi Hornlein. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. I think everybody knows me so far. I'm Heidi Hörnlein and I'm an integral practitioner, but a relationship coach, we would say, and a voice coach, and somebody who lives life and tries to make the best of it and tries to give some inspiration to other people. And one of my inspirations is sitting here. He wanted to come with me to this hangout. This is Mark Davenport, my beloved husband. So far, me. Do you want to say 2 words?
Well, I don't know. You did it really nice. It was short but very sweet. But anyway, yes, I occasionally join in on these discussions with Margarita and with Heidi. And today I'm coming in because I think I maybe have something I could add to this discussion. So that's it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Heidi. So our show offers single episodes or short series of talks and interviews regarding the most important areas of human life. For instance, relationship with ourselves and other people, and how we can express ourselves and growth, develop, and also how to heal our issues that we may have in our life. And I am so excited today because today we have a very special guest. His name is David Long, and he is an integral philosopher, artist, musician, who has a strong interest in how evolution is manifesting itself in human life. And I know Heidi and Mark has already had a talk with him about how children grow through the levels of development. And today we have asked him to talk with us more about the different meanings which is attributed to the money in the developmental stage in societies. So hello, David.
Hello, how you doing today? Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And before we dive into our topic, I would like to ask you to post your comments or questions here below on the event page because we would like to interact with you live. And if you're watching the video, please don't hesitate to write the comments below too, because we will read and write answers to all your questions. So, Heidi, what did you think about when you were thinking of inviting David to us? Can you tell us what your thoughts about that would be?
Yeah, my thoughts were, David has a very good idea about how development happens in human life, in individual life, and also in collective life. I mean, since the world was born up to now. And I think we all have, for instance, with money an issue. There are many other things we could see by the lens of development. And today I thought we could finish our mini-series about money by putting it a little bit into an order, because there are so many ideas about what money is, what it is not, and, you know, quite a bit of confusion. And as he is a specialist about spiral dynamics, this is the teaching about the evolution of personality and evolution of societies. We would look at it a little bit. And as you can see, I have already put a screen share on. And I think, David, would you like to do it, or Mark, to just introduce very, very briefly the levels of development which people can go through?
Well, I can start that, and you know, everybody jump in with the characteristics they see, both individually and societally, as we go through these stages. But if we begin in the lower right corner at number 1, beige. You know, this is virtually indistinguishable from a really smart gorilla, but it is human. And at this stage, people are just interested in staying alive from day to day. They have no other concerns. Relationships are relatively meaningless. They change from day to day depending on circumstances. And in this society, money is just one of those things. You may have some today, and so you buy something. And it's gone while you get what you need some other way. Money is just one of the things in your environment that you use and forget about and move on to the next thing. It would really be only an infant in individual development that would think of money that way. But then we go on to the next stage, which is, in this chart, purple, the magical, the animistic stage. This is really a tribal stage where people don't really have rules about money, but they do have some concept of trading and fairness and making sure everybody has what they need. And so there's a kind of unspoken understanding that money is for the benefit of the tribe. And everybody in the tribe has their needs, and they do their best to meet them. And no ego in this sense. And then after that, you know, we come to a red stage, and we can probably look back on our own lives and realize when we maybe first stole some money and realized that we could spend it on whatever we wanted. You know, if red has some abstract idea about money, it represents power, independence, the ability to do what you want, to break the rules. You know, the tribe is not going to stop you if you get away with it. And we have whole societies that still exist in the world that with that economy, just what you can get away with. And then comes the next stage, the blue stage, when people have rules agreed upon by huge communities of people, by millions of people. And money has a certain purpose. It's used for doing X, Y, and Z that are socially approved activities. Not everybody has the same amount of money. Some have more, some have less. But people don't really question very much the distribution of that money. It's used for social cohesion, by and large. But it's not tribal, but it is more advanced than that. And after that comes an orange stage, where people are really feeling like they can do anything they want with the money they have. They have no particular obligations to society, to others. It's just an expression of one's own development, one's own abilities, and some get hugely, insanely rich, and others stay very, very, very poor. And this is a kind of prevalent stage in much of society today, where people have such insanely huge amounts of money that they can't possibly use it for anything, spend it on anything. It's just something to have for itself. It's no longer for the exchange of goods and services. It's just simply to have. And in that stage, it's kind of pathological. And of course, there's a reaction to that in the green stage, where that insane preoccupation with money in itself, with achievement of more and more and better, is seen as unsustainable, something that can't go on, that will consume the world. And green starts to experiment with other kinds of uses of money. They have alternative kinds of money, things like Bitcoin now, and other kinds of bartering systems, where money doesn't have interest. At orange, interest can feed, you know, huge amounts of money produced automatically. Green eschews interest, certainly any exorbitant interest. And this is about where society is now, Western society, experimenting with alternatives to this orange preoccupation. And that's what we're sort of concerned about too in our own lives. If the old system doesn't work, what can replace it? You know, and this the investigation that we enter into is yellow. You know, what kind of systems can we put together that would serve all these other needs, these lower needs, which are real, in some kind of just, equitable, sane manner. So that's the introduction. There are couple other levels above too, but we needn't be concerned with that today.
Okay, let us bring back.
Mm-hmm.
And now we will talk about these things.
Yeah.
Where can you see in your own life where these levels of development, let's say the meaning you gave to money, was connected to the levels of development?
Would you mind if I just added a couple more things to what Mark had said?
Sure.
And I don't know, maybe you want to put back up the picture for a second, or maybe not. But yeah, one of the things that we have to remember when we're looking at the spiral is that it doesn't just apply to individuals, but it applies to collectives and societies. For example, like the idea of money is evolving, which was kind of implied in what Mark was saying, but I just wanted to maybe try to clear up any kind of confusion, because money as we know it today has to do with what I would say would be like somewhere around a level 4, authoritarian, or like an orange modern capitalistic, achiever, materialistic kind of an altitude. So all of the ways that individuals are experiencing and talking about money today at whatever stage they are at as an individual is in the context of where we are with money as a society. So I just wanted to make that clear if there was any kind of confusion about how money has come to be where it is. Like you spoke about the tribal times, like when it was more just about barter, and maybe there wasn't even money yet, if we're talking historically, you know what I mean? And you also mentioned Bitcoin and where we might be taking money in the future. So even our concept of money, I would say, is a dynamic thing, which is what we're talking about today. But I kind of wanted to see if we could couch it in a little bit more context before we started to continue up the spiral. But did you want to talk about examples of our experience as we develop?
I wanted to chime in there and ask you, David. This is extremely interesting to me because I'm not an integral expert at all, but I know a little bit about healing. So when you go and can you give some examples of, like an actual example of this red thing? You said something about capitalist, but can you outline that a little bit more? And how prevalent is that? And then compare it with the green one, where we have egalitarian, and those two levels, which we're moving up to, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I think I would do a better job of answering your question if I understood it a little bit better. You're asking, like, what are the differences between, like, a red and a green and an orange, and like how?
Yeah, so we have a person, let's say Donald Trump, or somebody who is very, very rich, and what exactly drives that kind of person? Not particularly to this person I mentioned, but what drives that person?
Well, going back to the spiral, like, probably as they have developed, different things have driven them along the way, but they are in a particular cultural context. Within our modern capitalist systems, the way that young people growing up handle money and relate to it, and how they relate to money to gain status in culture or power to express their ego or their will, that's going to change even as they develop in like probably when he was first coming up, you know, he probably saved and invested. He was probably, you know, much more entrepreneurial. But then once you have the money and you have the status, you know, that's why a lot of people move from orange to green on the spiral, is because when you have money, like, money is inherently a means to an end, not an end in itself. It's a tool that helps you to get something. You know what I mean? So if you've acquired all this stuff and you found that it doesn't actually fulfill you, you know, all the materialism and the wealth, then you're going to look for something outside of material possessions to fulfill yourself, and that's going to push your development even further. So it's a dynamic thing, you know, and the red impulsive, I want it now, I'm going to get it now, is slightly different than the achiever who's going to apply skillful means, or even the more yellow sort of tactical, let's figure out a way that we can bring this whole spiral online in a more healthy way, so that way everybody can benefit from the development that we've achieved so far.
And there's a question coming up in my mind there. Are we actually going up in the spiral, or are we going down in the spiral? It seems to me that there is two vectors here. That one is there's certain group of people who is, you know, founding homes and schools in Africa, and they advertise about that and say they're doing it to make more business for themselves. What do you think about that? What stage are those people in?
Well, I wouldn't say, to answer your first question, I wouldn't say that, you know, it's like we're definitely, like, inevitably moving towards, like, some kind of, you know, utopian point of like progress, or some kind of a singularity of, you know. There's sort of a general altitude where we as a society kind of like to hang out and encourage people to grow up to, and then once you start growing past that point, you start putting pressure on the society, you know, to grow and develop. But there are also people who are still, you know, holding on to past antiquated traditions, and they're kind of still holding it down. And so there is this tension, and I think one of the main issues today that a lot of us are dealing with or thinking about is, you know, like, are we gonna be in some kind of a collapse and go into some kind of a major regression, you know, through environmental disaster or economic collapse or whatever the disaster may be, or are we going to, you know, through knowledge and technology and, you know, spiritual development and awakening, evolve our society further and have some kind of breakthrough? And all that is in, you know, dynamic flux and unfolding right now, and it's not just one or the other, like you say, it's both.
Yeah, I just love what you say there, David, because it's like some people are really there and some people are not, and then it's hard to then not be judging those people who are staying in this particular state, right? Yeah. And so I'm watching myself too. Oh my goodness, how could they do that to these people? But they were just in that developmental stage, and maybe one has to accept it and then just work on ourselves, right?
Well, the way that, in the same way that we realize that that's the case about society, that there are some people who are on the cutting edge of evolution and they're pushing it forward, and there are some people who are holding it down and being clingy and stubborn. the spiral is levels of ideas. It's not that just as individuals, we have some ideas that are really highly developed and taking into account all these factors in really sophisticated ways, and then we have other ideas that are maybe holding us back, and they need some light shined on them and some clarity, and like you say, we're all in process, but we're also all intrinsically connected. There's nothing that you can do that doesn't affect the world that we share. So,
I just love that. I just love that. It's like rings on the water, right? I mean,
exactly.
even when we work with healing and working with chakras, the chakras never end. We're big collective, really. But the problem is when some people think they are a separate entity, right?
Yeah. And
what do we do with that?
Well, that's what I was going to answer your second question there. One of the integral tactics that we try to, you mentioned, you see these people and they're doing these hurtful, harmful things, and what do we do in terms of, like, you make the judgment that what they're doing is clearly harmful and bad, but you also see that they're immature and they're trapped in their own experience, and maybe they don't see it, and it might not be their fault. So I think we kind of have to practice both, masculine and feminine love on them, acceptance and expectance. You know what I mean? Accepting that they're where they are. That is them. That is their experience. But we also expect better of them, and we want them to grow, and we need to encourage that in a healthy way. So what we do is, the other thing that I think, the people who are really worried about being judgmental are worried about is intellectual violence, where you're at a higher stage of development and you see someone who's doing things at a lower stage of development, and you want to just go and try to rip them up. You know what I mean? We say that if you're working on it, it takes like 5 years of hard work to move through a stage of development, and there are a lot of lessons to learn at every stage. So it is violent to, like, try to impose your views on some, like, if I went up to my 5-year-old nephew and said, why, how come you can't get over yourself? How come you're stuck at red? You're this impulsive, egoic, no, me, mine, I want it now. It's because he can't take those further perspectives to be able to even see from those perspectives to be able to care. You know what I mean? It's not his fault. He doesn't see it. He's trapped in his
That's a very good point. Very good point there, because, like, there is so much judgment flying around of these evil things going on in the universe, instead of actually seeing that it is myself. I have to let go of this judgment and then see the reflection and work out those details in myself. That's my view when I actually have a consciousness about it.
But we can also, what we call... Go ahead.
I would like to bring it back to money. And we are talking a little bit,
Yeah.
And I would like to bring a little episode of my life. You were talking about your nephew, 5 years old. I was 6 or 7. And, when my mother sent me to do little shoppings, there was always the purse, and she said, take a mark or two and then buy these things. And I got used to taking some money, and then I took some money and I bought some sweeties for me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think it was bad, And then somebody discovered that I was buying every day a little sweetie and told it to my mother, and I got really bad blows of my father. It was the worst, beating, yeah. And I didn't understand, Why couldn't I take this money? I could do it before, and what is it? I couldn't understand their point of view. Sure, I didn't do it anymore, but this is the blue education to say the rules are these, and even if they were not so clear, for me, 6, 7, it was not really clear.
Yeah.
So,
I had a very
Thank
similar.
you, Heidi. That was good. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I had a similar experience at a higher level when I was, I think, age 16. I had a paper route, but it didn't pay very much, and there was a record player radio combination from the Sears Roebuck catalog, talking 1957, that I wanted. I really wanted. And instead of saving money, my father took me to the bank and co-signed a loan for I think it was $65 that this apparatus cost. And I was ushered into the orange attitude toward money, where you don't save and then spend it for what you need or want, but you just use credit, magic money. Sign on the line, and then of course, you have to pay afterward and afterward and afterward. And I ended up paying a lot more than $65 before I was done. Yeah. So moving from
David, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I've had very similar experiences to both of those things. I can relate to the being young and taking money. I dipped into my college fund, very early, and bought a bunch of sugary snacks, and wound up screwing myself over very young in that way. And I can also relate to what Mark is saying. When I was a little bit older, like my father was very very entrepreneurial. And for a very long time, I was really thinking that I was going to get into real estate with him. And I saw him do lots of things in the world, like making things happen. And I really, in some sense, resonated pretty well with the orange, almost like I want to say like Ayn Randian. I don't know if you're familiar with Ayn Rand and her philosophies of of self-mastery. I would say a very poor man's Nietzsche.
Yeah.
But the idea of using your brain to create wealth for yourself, in an intelligent way, I still like to try and resonate with a lot of that. But for me, at a certain point, like when I was young, coming into my adulthood, I thought, okay, I'm going to work with my dad, I'm going to do some of this stuff, and I'm going to make a bunch of money, and then I'm going to go do art. You know what I mean? And so I'm going into like all these real estate deals, and my dad, I would say he's a kind of a con man. Like con man in like the term that like con is like confidence, but he was also a really bad liar. Like he would say whatever. He was a salesman, like very, very orange, like probably a very unhealthy negative orange, but like he would tell people what they needed to hear for them to see him how he felt they needed to see him, so that way he could manipulate the situation. And to an extent, there's value in that too, if you can do it in an authentic way, because we're always acting for the circumstance or the situation. But in reaction to that, I was very turned off by all the materialism and the personal propaganda. You know what I mean? And the want for power and wealth, and I was just like, who cares? Like, I don't even want to be any part of it. It just started to make me sick after a while, the materialism of it, these like big houses and these mini mansions, and I was going through definitely an existential crisis, and definitely the old traditions and my old ways of looking at money and success breaking down all around me. And that's how I would describe my experience of, in some sense, moving from orange into green's relationship to money. And I was just really poor. Like I was, like a dishwasher, and I was like, I'm gonna forget it, like I'm gonna work on my art and just do that, and like work the bare minimum, just enough to survive, and hopefully one day the thing I care about will take care of me. And I'm still working on that.
What I find particularly funny, we are talking about your development from orange and green, and when I watch you, the lights are changing between orange and green all the time.
Yeah, that's true. The background varies in color.
The camera does not know what color it wants to be.
Yeah.
Is it changing sunlight in there in your room that does that?
Maybe that's what it is. There is a lot of different.
It's really beautiful.
There is a lot of different light coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys want to talk more about lower stages, but I think there's a really good way to kind of tie in her last question with these ideas about money at integral stages.
How would it be? How can we imagine that money can be seen in the future? This would be a very good question for you. You took it yourself, but it's fine.
Well, in integral, going back to your question about like what do we do about different people at different stages? How do we integrate diversity with discernment and not just be like, what can we do? Well, in integral we have a couple different approaches. The first approach is translational, and the second approach is transformational. So integral has developed all of these, what I would like to call, I guess, integral hacks into traditions at lower stages to show them, in some sense, how they can be healthy by maybe correcting the way that they're off balance.
Can you give an example? How would that be?
And so within capitalism, for example, there's an integral hack that they call conscious capitalism.
Yes.
And John Mackey, the guy who is one of the CEOs of Whole Foods, wrote a book about it. He's a big proponent of conscious capitalism, and basically it's taking into account what we call multiple bottom lines. So not just thinking about profit as the goal of having a business, but the goal of having the business is to do whatever the business is supposed to do to bring value to the people, and profit is like oxygen to the business that keeps it alive. So what makes a stage healthy at any level of development, we say, is that it integrates all four quadrants, which I'll explain in a second, and it also works to lift up the previous stage. So an example of that would be when blue traditional conformists reach down to the impulsive egoic people to try to lift them up and give them some kind of rules. That's how, it's healthy when they do that. In terms of all four quadrants in conscious capitalism, the way they talk about it is not just profit, but the product, how they take care of their people, and what kind of an impact does it have on the planet. So we're taking into account all of these factors, not just, we're making profit, so it's a good business. No, well, if we're going to be a healthy business, we have to be, a healthy member of our community, a healthy member of our society. We got to be taking care of our employees and putting quality products into the marketplace. Now, that is a translation within a modern system and a modern worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that is gonna be an integral approach to how to deal with money. But the transformational approach is what a lot of other integralists are working on, and they're in the more I don't know if we there's two stages in at the second tier, the integral and integrally informed. So
Yes.
there are people who are still sort of intuiting it, and then there are people who understand it and are applying it.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are working on these new governance systems for how we can balance not just top-down rule of legislation of taste, or bottom up, let's all take a vote, but figuring out more nuanced ways to deal with power and to balance our ecosystem in a way that's not just made up, because money is a made up game that we play with each other that doesn't necessarily tie back to the actual value of resources in any kind of a sustainable way. It's all based on what we can get for it. It's supply and demand. It's not like we have some kind of a resource-based economy where we have looked at everything that we have and figured out a sustainable way to manage those resources. That would be an integrally informed way of looking at an economy, and to some sense, we think that in the future, with technology and all that, we could get past a lot of these market-based systems and get into a field of abundance where we have all kinds of energy and resources to provide to everyone. If we can get past the class warfare that's inherent in market-based systems, where there's always going to be haves and have-nots. And I think the way that they're trying to do that is to balance the individual and communal themes, which we see when we look at that first picture that you show. The warm colors are the individual themes, and the cool colors are the communal themes, and we kind of swing back and forth. But some people are definitely tend to favor more one than the other. And so the individual themes have to do with the skills and talents and abilities that I have, and that's why they tend to be about self-mastery, the individual skills. Because and then on the other side you have the community, and in the communistic socialist themes, they tend to flatten out development, even in the way that they divide up jobs. So the synthesis is to maybe move the hierarchy from the economic sphere into the social sphere. So you have a natural growth hierarchy and a resource-based economy. So we would all move more towards the middle economically, but still get respect in the society for what we bring as an individual with our skills and our maturity and our knowledge.
So David, when we have achieved that on an individual basis, where on the scale would we be then?
Well, to be integrally informed is to be teal or turquoise. It's the one right above yellow.
Yay! I wore the right color today.
That's teal.
And
I had no idea about that.
It's world-centric or cosmocentric, whereas green tends to be more human-centric, and orange tends to be more nation-centric. Mm-hmm. Blue tends to be more like
religion.
Yeah, like my tradition. If you're a Christian, then you're in my in group, my we space.
Mm-hmm.
So it's expanding circles of care and being able to take into account more and more factors. But the other interesting thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen Mad Men, but one of the sort of Marxist feminist criticisms of why love doesn't work in a modern society is that you have women marrying men for economic reasons, and these men aren't necessarily suited to fulfill them because of the skills that you require in a modern workplace, you know, to be able to have a fulfilling relationship. And so those women, because they have money, go see therapists and then wind up divorcing those dudes. So it makes, when you have economics as a major factor for why people have relationships, that I think can really warps the values of a society to make everything about money and things, you know.
Sure. This is very interesting, David. But wasn't it always relationships, a marriage about safety, about economic union in some way? Well, is it the fact now we need to get out of that?
Well, in the past it has really had to be. But maybe now and in the future less so. And the way that gender roles in society are opening up, women have, you know, are treated more as equals, and so they're getting respect in whole new ways. And feminism has really done a lot of great things for women. There have been some talks about male disposability, which is still a problem too. And maybe we need to balance it out a little bit. But I think things are getting a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Good. So we are quite at the end of our talk of today. I would like to invite everybody to say, let's say, a final word to the watchers, what they, wherever they are, could do with their money or with the money they don't have.
Well, I can speak to the money I don't have, okay? Yeah. You know, and the fact is that Heidi and I don't have very much, but we have a wonderful life, you know. And it is not because, that's the wrong way to put it. It is because we have a real perspective on what our history has been and what the history of mankind has been and how we have come up through this, each experience these levels ourselves, and being able to see it going on out there in the world, here, nearby and far away. And so we're not stuck in a particular way of relating to one another, relating to our neighbors, relating to our community, even our countries. We're both out of our native countries. And it gives a wonderful freedom, which is sometimes a little scary because, you know, where's the basis? But by and large, it's just, we like to say it's beyond our wildest dreams, because we could not have predicted this from the levels that we were coming from. From the levels that we were coming from, we simply would have had more and better of whatever we could imagine. But what we have now is completely different. Yeah. Okay.
And not necessarily money-wise, no?
No, we're not talking about money necessarily.
I can jump into it. For me, it has been a big, big shift. When I finally earned my own money, this was a great thing, because for 40 years of my life, I lived earning some money, but it didn't really count so much, you know. So, and then I had to maintain myself, and I finally earned money, and I became into this greed and dependency of money. And when I finally could let go and say, I don't have to take a student with which I don't like to work just because I need the money. you know, for me it's the shift from the lack consciousness into the abundance consciousness, yes, which really has set me free to be much more relaxed and trusting in the universe that the money comes. And so far it always came in the right moment, you know, not much, but enough to live. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's
thank you. Heidi, that's a very good perspective, and it's a good success story too to both of you. I want to mention that. And what would you like to say as your final word, David?
Oh man, I think I would just like to retouch a lot of the points that Mark and Heidi just made in my own kind of way, because I really resonated with what they were saying. When she was talking about a lack versus an abundance kind of mentality, it was really reminding me of what I was saying about like moving into a future where we have more of an abundance kind of state of mind, and the real shift that we're going to have to make in our thinking to really be able to grasp the potential and possibility for humanity, and what we could do with our power if we really focused it. And in terms of what Mark was saying about fulfillment, I think about all the people throughout history who we think of as heroes. Like, they have really lived not just for their own success and monetary, you know, ambitions, but the reason that they're heroes is because they've contributed something great to the world. They're not just living for their ego; they're living for eternity. You know, as a vehicle in this play. And the other thing that I heard Heidi say briefly, which relates back to money, which I think is really important, is right now within a capitalist world system. I mean, forget about well, I don't want to say that. the way you want to vote, the way you really want to think about your votes is where you put your time and your money, because that's what you support. Honestly, like, and every time you go into the marketplace, that's when your morals, that's where the rubber meets the road. You know what I mean? We need to really be conscious consumers, conscious capitalists, not just in terms of, you know, how we would run a conscious business, but really need to take into account those same factors as a conscious consumer. What is this company, and you know, who am I supporting? What is this product, and is it healthy? Is it good for me? What's up with the packaging? How do they treat their people? And what kind of an impact is this having on the world that we live in? So that's what I would want to end on. Live like you have an abundance. Live for eternity, not just for your ego, and put your money where your mouth is.
Wow, that's so awesome, David. We are so happy to have you on our show, and I would like to invite you back. I think Heidi agrees too, right?
Sure.
And
it's my pleasure. Let's do it again anytime.
Yeah. So this is the end of the show. Heidi, did you want to mention some kind of
some kind of what?
You know, our outro statements where we say, I forget now what we're going to do.
No, the thing is, we will go on with our show every Thursday at 3 p.m. my time, our time, and it is 9 a.m. your time. And it's about various topics of life, the importance, and we will see on them from different perspectives. And as you see, we both, me and Mark, we are integral practitioners, so we have the tendency to see the things a little bit from a larger perspective. And today, having invited David, he is excellent in explaining these things better and better. You know, this is just, we want to bring to people to see the things they are confronted with from different perspectives, so they can find a way through their problems, through their life, and not get stuck in just one perspective or two, which keeps them into the present. And I think this is the goal of our transmissions, of our Connections show. And we want to connect with more people. And from now on, we will be in more.
Good. Every week.
Every week. Not every week more.
Well,
At the end, we end up with 200. This is not possible.
Not 200. Okay.
Okay, guys. So this will be the end of this episode, and so we'll see you next week on Connections. And Heidi and I, we say goodbye and see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, Margarita.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, David.